Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. We are here starting the second panel of this webinar. Thank you very much for attending. We have a very few interesting presentations from the company Latrix, from Quasi-IP, and also from Saipem. That was initially programmed for this panel, and we will also be able to hear the presentation from Will Rowley that had some connection issues in the first panel, but he is now with us, and we will start with his presentation. And a short bio of Will Rowley is he is an internationally recognized and connected energy market specialist of over 22 years of experience, who creates and delivers opportunities for strategic growth and structural change and development. He has worked for global service companies and major operators with a focus on integrated service development across major market sectors. Will previously lead in-field systems, now Wood Mackenzie, and Douglas Westwood, now Westwood Global. Will, thank you very much for joining us and for the patience with the internet. I'll be happy to see your presentation now.
Wonderful, thank you, Marcelo. So one of the colleagues, Anna, is going to run the slides. I'm going to turn my camera off as well, just to try and make sure we get a stable connection. And my apologies for those who I missed this morning. I'm also going to go at quite a pace, as I'm really appreciative of being squeezed in into this second session. So as Marlo says, I've been involved in the offshore industry quite a long time. I've been involved with Decom North Sea as an organization for a bit. This morning you heard about market regulation, you heard about processes. I want to talk a little bit about behavior and around approach, because there are some differences in decommissioning. I'm also going to pick up on the word partnership that was mentioned earlier today as well. So next slide, please, Anna. So I want to start by just talking a little bit about Decom North Sea. Anna, can you move to the next slide? It's not showing on my screen, but if you can see it on your screen. So Decom North Sea is a not-for-profit organization. It's a membership organization with over 300 members spread around the world, mainly in Europe, but increasingly international. So our membership spans 16 countries at the moment and growing continually. We're I guess the largest organization really just focused on decommissioning, late life and decommissioning for the offshore sector, predominantly oil and gas, but increasingly renewables and nuclear and elsewhere. And the reason for mentioning this is because the connections are a key part of us as an organization. And being able to connect people and companies together and to share some of the knowledge and not just some of the opportunities, but some of the experience and practice is a key part of who we are and what we set out to do. I won't read through all these different elements. For those who get a copy, you can see how we try to do this. And that generally is right across the world. So it's a real pleasure, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. But we've also worked very closely across Southeast Asia, across America, as well as across Europe. And the advantage of that, it gives us the chance to take lessons, to take input from around the world, because that's where knowledge and experience really can be shared. And if I look at the whole section around and the whole part of decommissioning, the behavior and how we share and how we approach is different to normal standard operations, whether it be construction or not normal operations. And part of that starts with the perception. So next slide, please, Anna. If we look at decommissioning there is still a general perception, unfortunately, around what decommissioning is. It is a natural part of the life cycle of any asset, and increasingly it should be viewed as a key stepping stone as part of this term energy transition, which we hear all around the world with slightly different interpretations. But dealing with the legacy of one energy and moving on to the next and transferring the lessons is a key part of what decommissioning is about. So this perception of rusty steel and old technology, that it may look like rusty steel, but the skills, the expertise are, excuse the pun, very much cutting edge. And for those of you who are listening who are engineers, installing something that is structurally sound is actually much easier than removing something that may not be structurally sound. It's a different set of challenges and a different set of problems. But they're not unique problems. Next slide, please, Anna. The reality of decommissioning is it involves a lot of managing unknowns. And now, from an engineering point of view, that is exciting as well as challenging. It also involves controlling a lot of contaminants. So it really is very skilled engineering. And as I said before, if you're trying to deal with structural assets that aren't structural assets, as an example, you really do have to have some innovative thinking to how you do this. Many of the assets that are going to be recovered weren't designed for removal. It's sometimes argued that it was considered, but often the reality is the priority was to get them in and get them operational so they actually generate money. Getting them out, you've got to be a bit smarter. And at the same time, you have to be very focused that decommissioning is perceived as a cost. So managing the costs while maintaining the safety standards takes a lot of focus and a lot of dedication. And the safety standards also come into the environmental standards. It's the element for risk and for damage to the environment is greater in the decommissioning stage than it is in any other. So the commitment to doing things right, not just safe, but doing the right thing, is a key part of the mentality around decommissioning. And those who are heavily involved in decommissioning all around the world, you find they are some of the most responsible engineers and specialists because they're very conscious that they have this environmental protection aspect to their role. The other thing about decommissioning, which is different to other parts of the industry and other parts of the life cycle, is the need to be much more open and have a higher degree of transparency. First of all, the risks are different, and there really is a willingness to share the learnings, share the experience to avoid repeated mistakes. Mistakes in the decommissioning sector can be not just dangerous, to be blunt, can be fatal. I know they can in installation phase, but you have a different set of risks. Which actually means when you look at the sector and look at what the decommissioning sector has to achieve, it's not a quiet backwater. It's actually extremely exciting. A lot of the advances in digitalization, in survey, in technology are driven by the decommissioning sector and the need to reduce those risks and control, try and manage those risks. Next slide, please, Anna. So I guess if there's one thing I want to leave with you is you heard about the scale of the opportunity, you've heard about the changes in regulations and the fact that there's process, but the innovation required is not just about technology. It really is about a mindset and an approach. And I'll illustrate that with just a few numbers here. So new or advances in technology, and these are general numbers I've aggregated from different countries and from around the world. So it's just a rule of thumb. But The new advances of technology are estimated to reduce the cost by around 2%. What that really says is a lot of the major advances in technology have been made. We are still looking and very keen to make sure that there is more innovation, and you're going to hear some great ideas this afternoon. But there's no magic bullet that's suddenly going to reduce costs substantially. The way to reduce costs are going to come from taking the lessons and the experience from elsewhere and applying them so that you can manage and control those costs and the associated risks. So effective sharing of the lessons and the gained experience, that can have a reduction in the cost of over 10%. And a lot of that is making sure that your cost targets are hit. Overruns are very expensive. And a big impact on the risks, because a lot of those lessons are around managing the risks, avoiding the mistakes. And then we're into applying proven technology. And again, I'm not to knock the innovation you're going to hear, and there is some great innovation, but a lot of it is underpinned by proven techniques, maybe have used elsewhere in a different part of the life cycle or a different sector, but being smart enough to get them reapplied into the decommissioning sector, and that can cut costs. So this mindset, this approach is being about a bit clever and a bit smarter. It's not just about a new widget. And to give you some ideas, just on the graphics on the bottom is the movement over the last decade, just in the North Sea, has been away from what's called piece small, taking the platforms apart piece by piece, to larger elements of topside removal through to complete asset removal. And that's not just been driven by cost, that's been driven by the fact it's far safer to dismantle onshore, a much more controlled environment, less risks than it is offshore. So it's balancing, as was mentioned earlier, the different criteria. So on that note, I'll just summarize. Next slide, please, Anna. So most of the challenges, not all, because there's always the opportunity for something new, but most of the challenges that you will come across in decommissioning have been met before. Part of the challenge is finding the people and the experience that you can gain the knowledge from. The current knowledge bank, though, is vast and it continues to grow. And it's the most open part of the life cycle. People are generally quite happy to share. Even down to the fact that for a number of operators and service companies, there's little commercial gain in not sharing, much more gain to be more open and to share that knowledge and share the benefit that comes from that. So the simple questions we all ask: how do I plug and abandon that well? How do I recover that flow line? How do I clean inside? Do I lift the conductors in one piece or do it separately? These are standard questions, and the processes you've been talked about, there's a knowledge bank to go alongside that. Most of that knowledge bank sits in the supply chain companies, and in some cases more sits with the companies in the supply chain than it does with the oil companies, the operators. So it was mentioned the need to look at partnerships in the past. That's very much the way the community, and we call it the decommissioning community, that's the way it works. So I'll leave you with a thought: get the right mindset, embrace it, reach out to, not just to us as an organization, to anyone in the sector, and you'll be pleasantly surprised. They will share, and the advantage is there for you to leverage. On that, I will draw to a close. Thank you again for the time.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting. As part of the university, which is my work, I'm always happy to see somebody bringing the innovative part of the work to the decommissioning, because most of the people think that decommissioning is a job that is easier than, and it's simple and can be done in in a way that is always done. But there is a lot of challenges in this, and innovation would benefit a lot for the oil companies, for reducing costs in these operations. It's quite important. Thank you very much. So
thank you very much. So I agree.
Thank you, Will. So our next presentation will be from Andrew Stevenson. He is the CEO of Latrix Limited. Stevenson is a chartered engineer and entrepreneur with over 15 years experience with the subsea and offshore sectors. He has been involved in over 400 projects covering the development of innovative deck equipment and subsea tools, including pipe lay, cable lay, trenching, and handling systems. He established Ardmore Craig, a UK-based engineering consultancy business, in 2010, which spun Latrix out as a separate venture in 2017. Stevenson is the chair of the Northeast region of the IMEC and acts as a trustee and ambassador for a number of organizations promoting engineering and technology to the next generation. Andrew, thank you very much for presenting to us the solutions that Latrix has. I wish you a good presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Marcelo. Thanks to Sabina, the DIT, Decom North Sea, and the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro for providing the opportunity to present today. So greetings from a rather cold and snowy northeast of England in the UK. As Marcelo said, I'm Andy Stevenson, the founder and CEO of Latrix Limited, and we're a UK business developing innovative rental solutions for the offshore sector. So I'd like to take this opportunity to give a brief overview of the business and our innovative approach to pipeline decommissioning. So since establishing in 2017, we have developed a series of patent pending products for cost-effective pipe lay, pipeline decommissioning, and floating offshore wind installation, all utilizing smaller, cheaper vessels coupled with our innovative equipment to offer significant cost savings to clients. The ideas behind the system were conceived almost a decade ago, and since spinning out the concept into Latrix, we've been able to develop the technology through the support of our shareholders, including Mercia Asset Management, a venture capital firm who've invested by the Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund, which is backed by the British Business Bank and the British government. The images on the screen show the system in its pipe lay mode and in a further flexible installation mode. We believe the system is unique in that it can install and recover rigid and flexible pipelines, cables, umbilicals, and bundles, all utilizing the same core structural and mechanical modules. As such, we deem this the world's most universal vessel asset. So finally, on the business, Latrix is targeting to meet 7 of the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and we hope to achieve these by reducing the cost of offshore wind, using local content within our system builds, utilizing our innovative patent pending designs targeting carbon capture and storage alongside offshore wind, helping to clean up the seabed via our decommissioning spread, and maybe most importantly, utilizing global partnerships and a collaborative approach in everything that we do. So today's webinar topic's on decommissioning, and I'm going to concentrate on this mode of operation and try to explain the principles behind the system, the benefits we feel that it brings, and the large cost savings that can be attained using a different, innovative approach to decommissioning. I'm going to provide some thoughts from Latrix's perspective on opportunities within the Brazilian market. I'm going to share the results of a series of studies we've undertaken for several clients around the globe. So the main design driver behind the system is that all the core elements, so structural, mechanical, hydraulic, and control, are all based on existing tried and tested offshore technologies. By combining these together in an innovative manner, we have a new build system which lowers the technical risk with a high TRL or technical readiness level. So some examples of the technologies that we've built into the system include ROV launch and recovery systems, bucket linkage designs for wide-angle A-frames, and components from carousel central bearings and reel drive systems. So these are all areas where design team have previous experience and are all items that are in everyday use in the offshore sector around the globe. And finally, the design base is against a range of internationally recognized design codes, including DNV and the Lloyd's Code for lifting appliances in a marine environment. So I'll finish on the engineering front, which is a key driver for the business, with a short animation which shows the system in pipeline decommissioning mode, which hopefully helps you to visualize it in operation. So the system is designed for quick mobilizations, i.e. installing it on a vessel as quickly and cost effectively as possible. And we're looking to use vessels of opportunity, so ships that can be chartered on a daily basis with good availability across the globe, avoiding the more expensive and specialist ships. So examples would be PLSVs, pipes, platform support vessels, or anchor handlers. So as a comparison, a platform supply vessel or anchor handler would typically cost in the region of $25,000 per day. And this would compare to $250,000 upwards for a dedicated pipeline vessel. So the system is patent pending, covering installation and retrieval of catenaries, which covers a wide range of service sectors and applications. So as I said, all of the components within the system are based on tried and tested technologies, and we've simply brought these aspects together in an innovative way, reducing the technical risk significantly. So once the vessel's moved to location via an ROV, it will go down and latch on to the end of a pipeline and bring it up into our tower system. The system has two sets of clamps, a traveling upper clamp and a lower fixed hang-off clamp. And the process that we're calling a reverse jelly process. We haul in a section of the catenary, it's clamped at the bottom, and using cutting equipment, it's removed and it's inserted into a pipeline cassette. The process is repeated until the cassette is full, at which point the tower is folded to the deck while the catenary remains held in the lower hang-off clamp. The full cassette can then be removed, and an empty cassette can be placed back into the tower. The tower can move back to the required catenary angle, and the operations can continue. So depending on the length and the type of product being recovered will dictate the type of vessel that can be used, the ideal deck footprint area, and the number of journeys. Once the vessel's returned to port, we can put the system into what we call A-frame mode, which allows us to load and self-unload, effectively using a crane at the end of the vessel. This increases the range of vessels that we can use and helps drive down the costs. Also allows us to use harbours which haven't got deaded quayside craneage. Okay, so we believe that the benefits of our system over existing practices such as reverse relay and subsea cutting and grabbing are many, both from a technical and from a commercial perspective. The system's safer to use, avoids subsea working and cutting practices, ensures any spillages and cutting materials are contained on deck, and allows operations in increased weather windows and with vessels of opportunity, which can be utilised in smaller ports or harbours with decreased draft. All of this leads to the significant cost savings which are passed on to the end user. So stats on the screen give a few ideas on the potential market size. Just looking at the UK, from a decommissioning perspective, there are thousands of kilometres of pipelines to be removed in the UK continental shelf, with strong potential in other southern North Sea sectors, the Middle East and the Far East. In the UK, around 48% of the pipelines are within the sweet spot of our system, which is looking at diameters in the range of 2 inches to 16 inches, which fits in with the capacities of our cassette-based system. Above these diameters, our system can still be used, but without the cassette, for recovery of larger diameter pipelines or bundles, with the sections cut from the catenary and lowered from the tower onto deck trolleys, which take the place of the cassettes within the tower. And if you're interested in finding more about that, you can view a bundle recovery animation on our website. So turning our focus to Brazil, Latrix has been involved in discussions with the Brazilian market over the last 8 months, with support from the UK Department of International Trade. And we're starting to see some real momentum in the sector and projects coming out to tender. As Mauro mentioned in the first session today, the announcement before Christmas of the Petrobras Al Subtember for engineering, preparation, removal and disposal of almost 1,000 kilometers of flexible pipeline with a mass of over 55,000 tons shows one of the major opportunities within the Brazilian market, and something that we hope we can play our part in reducing the total decommissioning costs in the sector. So in light of these opportunities, we made a number of important strategic decisions during the last quarter of 2020. Firstly, we appointed a local agent based in Rio, a company called Centric Energy, who have significant vessel operation and SURF installation experience within their team. So we appointed them to support our activities in Brazil, and this has led to a number of studies and simulations using our technology. And secondly, we've started to develop a further product specifically targeting flexible pipeline recovery in the Brazilian market, building in the same reverse recovery and cutting philosophy as shown in the previous animations, but catering for lower line tensions and loads, resulting in lower bill cost and a lower rental rate. And we look forward to presenting these to the market in due course. So over the last 12 months, we've undertaken a range of different desktop studies or feasibility studies for operators across the globe, including pipeline and bundle recovery projects in the North Sea, projects in the Far East and projects in Brazil. And over the next couple of slides, I'd like to share some of the results of this work. So all of the studies have compared the costs and timescales using a large number of inputs, including vessel rates, equipment rental costs, personnel costs, step-by-step operational sequences, and regional weather windows and wave height limitations to build in the probability of time delays during planned operations. Our costing software, which has been developed internally, also examines the field location, port and harbour locations, and respective transit times and distances, and the resulting costs, which are then all built into the comparative assessment. So I'll give two examples. The first case study summarises a desktop report that was undertaken on behalf of an American operator for one of their business units in the Far East. This looked at recovering multiple pipelines of various lengths and various sizes in the range of 2.5 inches to 15 inches in diameter in water depth around 150 meters. So our system was compared against a number of other decommissioning methods, including subsea cut and grab and reverse relay recovery, with the results showing significant cost savings of 45% versus the nearest competitor and time savings over half the client's default option. In addition to this, there are also large savings in the amount of CO2 equivalent emissions during the operation due to the speed and use of smaller vessels with our technology. So the second case study was undertaken more recently and associated with a project in Brazil, working alongside a vessel operator and our partner Centric Energy, and comparing the total costs of recovery and offloading against a pipeline vessel. The basis for this work was utilising our flexible recovery solution, and again this utilised a smaller vessel of opportunity and accounted for multiple return trips with the smaller vessel compared to a single journey with the larger PLSV. The cost comparison included the time spent for unloading recovered products with both methods and also the associated harbour costs. And again, this led to a significant saving of around 40%, including contingency costs, which were built into the Latrix approach. I think this compares quite well with some of the numbers presented by Marcelo in the earlier session, showing the benefits of platform supply vessels and vessels of opportunity. So just to recap, Latrix is an innovation-led, offshore-focused startup with a pending IP portfolio. We have exposure to multiple global offshore sectors, including pipelay, wind, and carbon capture and storage, with a focus currently on the UK and international decommissioning markets. We have local representation in Brazil via Centric Energy and have started to develop a dedicated system for the Brazilian market. Finally, we've undertaken a range of studies across the globe, validating the cost savings against a range of different metrics. So I'll finish with a quote which I believe sums up our approach in a single sentence. We'd be pleased to hear from investors, suppliers, or clients who can help us develop further in the Brazilian market. I'd like to thank you for listening. And if you'd like to visit the website, there's a range of animations showing how the system works in its different modes of operation and further details of its advantages and benefits. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Andrew. It was a very interesting presentation. I do believe that these innovative solutions may help a lot with the decommissioning here in Brazil. We have, as was highlighted by Destry in his presentation in the previous section, that we are in the tip of the iceberg for all the opportunities here in Brazil, and I'm glad to see that we can bring innovative solutions, and these solutions may help reducing the costs of these operations. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Marcelo.
So our next presentation will be from Dorothy Burke. She is a managing director of Quasi-IP. Hi, Dorothy. It's good to see you. A short bio from Dorothy. Dorothy has a BSc in Math and Computing from University of Aberdeen and a Master's in Management Science from University of Strathclyde. A career track record in technology development, and is an elected board member of Subsea UK. Prior to ECOSI, Dorothy gained significant decommissioning experience in working with Decom North Sea for 4 years before joining Exodus Group to lead a large consultancy project with the Japanese government organization and 25 Japanese oil and gas operators covering the technology and economic of decommissioning. Passionate about technology and innovation, Dorothy enables collaborative opportunities for Scottish companies with global partners. Her role in ECOSI has offered her exciting opportunities to bring new subsea technology to market and play an integral part in development trials and projects. Thank you, Dorothy. I wish you a good presentation.
Thank you. The sharing screen should just come up just now, hopefully.
It's okay.
Good. Well, thank you very much to Marcel for the welcome, and thank you to Sabina, to DIT, and to Decom North Sea, and COPA for the invitation to be involved in this event. For us, it's very exciting to be involved in presenting to the Brazilian market, and the market which we're very keen to become involved in. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our company and tell you a bit about some of the technologies. As Marcel introduced, I've got a lot of decommissioning experience, and I've been hearing so many discussions about the challenges in decommissioning, and Brazil has significant ones. So we're very delighted, and as Will said, we'd like to share experience from the UK to see where we can help. So Quasi-IP is a small technology company based in Scotland near Aberdeen, the global energy hub. And we've been working in the oil and gas sectors, including decommissioning, subsea construction, renewables, salvage and defence. Subsea was formed in 2018. A predecessor company, Subsea, was involved in markets in Brazil, and we've experience of working with Brazil and with our local representatives who I'll introduce you shortly. So if I tell you a bit about some of the technologies that we've been developing, the ones that I will be covering today, which are specific to decommissioning, are ambient lifter and ambient linear, which are buoyancy lifting devices, and we've got some specific decommissioning solutions with those. But we're also got some innovative cable carousel and basket solutions, and are developing a floating offshore wind full mooring system and a turbine for underwater generation of electricity for subsea assets, for example. So I'll be focusing today on our ambient lifter family, and it's basically, we like to develop very simple, robust engineering, because with a track record of many of our engineering team from lifetime in subsea, we know what a tough environment it is. So we like things to make things simple, robust, and make sure that they work in tough conditions. So the simple principle behind the ambient is Archimedes' principle, which is a 2,000-year-old principle. And basically, when Archimedes jumped in the bath and the water was displaced, and he said, "Eureka," that is what ambient works on. So buoyancy of the water in a pipe, buoyancy of a pipe is corresponds to the amount of water that is pumped out of the pipe. So why big metal ships float, why our ambient lifter floats. So if you pump out 1 ton of water, then we will get 1 ton upward buoyant force. And that's exactly the simple principle in which our technology is based. So I'll talk a bit about some of the developments specifically in decom of our tools. So we've developed what's called an ambient linear decommissioning tool, and it allows adjustable buoyancy so that we can fly long, thin things underneath the water. We can adjust the buoyancy to bring them to surface. We can adjust the buoyancy to lower them gently to the seabed. And that can be used in the vertical or horizontal position. So many of the flexible issues that we've been discussing with potential clients in Brazil will be dealt with using some version or extension of this tool, but it's the same principle for all. So basically, the tool consists of the yellow pipes, are the buoyancy pipes, and they will be sized based on what we are lifting. And the controls and the manifolds which control the buoyancy of those give very, very fine control, because we're not controlling the air in and out, we're controlling the water in and out, and that can be controlled kilogram by kilogram lift. So an example of removing decommissioning bundles, flexibles, pipelines could be if there are no hydrocarbon issues with them and they have been cleaned and flushed, then they can be cut into sections, placed into a bespoke basket, which EIP have also developed, and taken to shore on an anchor handler vessel, winched up by the winch. So the benefits of that are we have a low-cost vessel that can deploy the ambience. We don't need a crane lift vessel. We're not affected by what's going on in the surface. Once the tools are down there, they're working well. So and it gives manageable sections. So those methods could be used for all sorts of decommissioning of flexibles and other long, thin elements, subsea. So this will show the different elements of it. In the right-hand picture, you will see at the right-hand side, ambient lifter deploying a shears tool to cut the sections, ambient linear with the ROV in the foreground, and it'll then fly and float the sections of pipe into the basket for recovery. And the beauty is that operations can continue whilst the anchor handler vessel will shuttle back and forwards. Alternatively, I believe there are issues with some of the ALSUB flexibles where there might be concern that there might be hydrocarbon leakage. So one of the things we've been looking at and developing methods for is encasing the flexibles within and encapsulating the flexibles inside the PE pipe. So essentially the flexible will be taken into a PE pipe, and then we'll use what we call our ambient linear long length, and that can be attached to the PE pipe and attached to the flexible within the pipe and floated to the surface, either to be taken onto a vessel or to be towed to shore to a decommissioning facility. But the beauty of this is you can do this in long lengths of flexibles, so it minimizes the cut subsea and makes sure that you're absolutely minimizing the potential of leak of hydrocarbons as you're moving the flexibles that may have been in the AL subzone for some number of years. The other thing is that the environmental protection inside our ambients are only seawater and air, so there is no danger of leakage. And in terms of using a much lower cost vessel, we're using much lower carbon footprint in terms of the vessels we're using, and we're very environmentally friendly. So it gives us, a number of different benefits as well as being cost effective. So looking at FPSO flexible removals, obviously this is a big issue in the Campos Basin and something that Brazil is very much needs to solve. And traditional methods look at using, heavy lift vessels, crane vessels, taking the flexibles, clamping them, cross-hauling them under the vessel, attaching them to clamps. It's a long, laborious, expensive, and carbon heavy process, if you like, because you've got alongside a heavy lift vessel alongside the FPSO for a long time within the process. So instead of which, we're looking at the ambient decom tool. So it then clamps onto the flexible. Obviously, the process to disconnect the flexible from the FPSO will remain largely the same, but we can clamp on to the flexible and make that neutrally buoyant. So therefore, there's no downward pressure on the flexible whilst it's being removed, whilst the disconnection is being made, and that makes it much easier. And then we can gently lower the flexible down to the seabed and repeat that process with multiple tools, with multiple ROVs, if time is of the essence. But basically, we can remove all the flexibles one by one from the vessel very, very quickly, and cost effectively and environmentally friendly, and allows the FPSO to return to shore for decommissioning, whereas we can then come back and then do the decommissioning of the flexibles from the seabed, disconnected from actually having to work with the FPSO. So that allows it to be decommissioned as quickly as possible, and again, minimizing any leaks and significantly reducing the cost. Conductor removal for platforms with conductors. This is a big headache in the UK sector, because there are many platforms with multiple conductors which are approaching well beyond their design life. So this is something that we've been talking about with a lot of the UK operators, and is also pertinent in Brazil, of course. So again, using a version of the ambient linear decommissioning tool, and a bespoke conductor basket, and we'll partner with cutting companies to either put on a specialized shears or diamond wire tools, and we'll put on multiple diamond wire tools if that's the method we use, to make sure we've got redundancy. So basically, that will allow the ambient linear will clamp onto the conductor. It will use a hydraulic G-clamp and pin, and will cut that section of conductor from below the platform, so that there's no need to pull the conductor up onto the drill floor to carry out the cuts. This can all happen subsea, and it will all happen without interrupting any of the topside operations. So particularly if you've got simultaneous operations where you're still producing from that platform, but you need to decommission some of the conductors, some of the wells, because of integrity issues, for example. And the other beauty is that we size it to go in between the conductor guide frames. So you don't have to take conductors with additional clamps and anodes. You don't have to take them through the frames. You can maneuver them out from underneath the platform, and you can do that either with an ROV from the platform itself or from a vessel. And again, that's working independently of any operations on the platforms. Use a boat basket, which has a skid system, which we've used previously, and basically that allows the cut sections to be taken onto the back of an anchor handler vessel and returned to shore. And again, that vessel can return back and forwards to shore intermittently, so it doesn't have to be sitting waiting throughout the whole operations. Again, saving carbon, saving cost, looking after the environment. Finally, our ambient lifter tool, and that can be sized. That's a coil of PE gas pipe, and that's, as I say, the ballast is water, the buoyancy is air, and there's a specialist gel peg in between. It's deployed with a webbing sling, so that avoids any splash zone issues, and that can be sized accordingly. So you can technically make one of these lift 10,000 tons. But if we're wanting to decommission larger, small structures, then we can attach those through a bespoke lifting frame and remove. We've been looking at removal of very large, up to 1,000-ton manifolds in the North Sea. And this is something that the operators are very keen on. We've presented through Oil and Gas Technology Centre and to a number of different operators who are looking at these methods, because, again, you're avoiding the expensive heavy lift vessels, which is going to be an issue, obviously, in terms of Brazil and the availability of vessels also. We've also looked at how do we get items from the seabed to the surface, and there will be small structures, the likes of trees, small subsea items, and also, as we talked about earlier, the cut sections of flexibles, of pipelines, of bundles, etc. So we've developed a basket mechanism so that can be hauled onto the back of an anchor handler, and that can be used for any kind of decom debris, and will be available for whatever it is we're decommissioning, to avoid the issues of how do we take things onto the vessel deck. Finally, just want to tell you a little bit about how we're looking at the different projects, proving our technology. There's a simulator, and I believe there's one linked in Rio also. And basically, it's looking at the full physics, the real-time environment, and it's modeling. It looks like an animation, but it's actually working on all the physics. So we can model your asset with our systems and make sure it's all going to work. So it allows you to make sure that it's run with the most effective way possible. For example, Equinor uses this extensively to plan and run projects beforehand, also to increase safety and reduce costs. So I'll just run a quick simulation to show you the conductor removal, for example. I hope you can see that now. And that's basically running the simulation with the full physics. I'm not sure if that's visible to you, so I'll just run on now. So to finalise, we're very serious about the Brazilian market. We have appointed P&S engineering consultants, Marco and Jairo, who are very experienced in the Brazilian market, and we're absolutely delighted to be working with them and for them to be interfacing with some of the operators and other companies we'll be talking to around how do we bring our technology. The beauty of our technology is it's simple, it's robust, it can be assembled in country, it doesn't need to be towed from the UK or other waters. We can assemble the items in country, and we're very, very keen to create a proper local presence in Brazil and make sure that we're developing technology that is beneficial across the industry. So if you're wanting to find out more, please contact ourselves, but more importantly, please contact Marco and Jairo, and they'll be able to tell you more and integrate our technologies into your solutions. We're really keen to help. We're really excited about the possibilities of how to approach decommissioning in Brazil based on the experience over 10, 15 years in the UK, and would be very keen to work with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dorothy, for your presentation. It was another very interesting, innovative solutions for decommissioning, and I'm pretty sure that they will help us to also reduce costs and apply out-of-the-box solutions here in Brazil, right? I'll be happy to see the questions that the audience will have for this very interesting ideas. Thank you. Now our next presenter here is Lauro Pupin from Saipem. Thank you, Lauro, for attending and for being here in this webinar with us in Savannah. Lauro Pupin holds a degree in mechanical engineering from Federal University of Espírito Santo, and an MBA in project management from University of São Paulo. He started his career in the subsea engineering area of Petrobras, holding several positions in the company, among them project manager for subsea production development, manager of Subsea RM, and also manager of engineering and installation of subsea production systems. He joined Saipem do Brasil initially as Subsea engineering director, then business development, and currently he is responsible for the commercial and the tendering area of Saipem Brazil. Additionally, presently he is director of ABESPetro, the Brazilian Association of Oil and Gas Contractors. Lauro, wish you a good presentation. Thank you for coming.
Okay, Marcel, thanks a lot for your introduction. In fact, I will not make a presentation. I plan to tell the history of creation of this business in Brazil, the decommissioning, that you had the opportunity to witness in the last few years, let's say 5 years, the creation of the business from practically scraps to now on the way to be a mature business here in Brazil. So let's see that 5 years ago, okay, not exactly the date, but some years ago, we were seeing all those aging assets, installations, especially in Campos Basin and also northeast of Brazil. They were there for more than 30 years, and some of them, of course. And we were thinking what to do, how would be the destiny of those things that were there. So there are some discussion, a lot of stakeholders, some discussions, some positions. For instance, some are saying that, okay, it's better to keep everything in there, or they're saying it's better to remove everything, and then the thing is evolved to one more specific for each case. There is a better solution, depending on each case. So, but this was a discussion that was going on. So have the people from environment at that time, and of course this is a very important effect on the environment. And so the engineering people start to look for solutions. If we need to remove it, then what will do to remove it? How we will do, and how practically we can do it in a economic and a viable way. And so those are studies that were being developed at that time. There are, of course, the participation of the academy, because it's important to define how the approach, the necessary approach that we were faced at the time. And of course, there is also the operators, of mainly Petrobras, but there are a few others. And so this is the operators need to have one way to see for this let's say business. And there are also another point important in this decommissioning is about the recycling the materials that are on the seabed. We know, for instance, that if you recycle steel, if you produce steel, recycle the used before, is half of the carbon footprint to extract the steel from the ore, from the nature. For instance, the polyamide that is on the flexible there, to recover it and to have it ready, it takes more or less 10% of the total carbon footprint to produce polyamide from the nature. So this is also this interesting consideration that was raised at that time. And there was also the concern here in Brazil about, okay, you are creating a business, you have the opportunity for people to create more work for people. That's an important issue here in the country. So this is all these things were evolving with different people and the different participants on this, let's say, walking to a decision. And so then after some analysis, we could see that there would be a business in there. So then came the businessmen. So the businessmen started looking, okay, well, there is let's say, a predictability on this. It should be a business that you take one a huge volume 1 year, then 5 years without it. So there is continuity on this business. And of course, the businessmen always ask that how much money we are talking about on this development. And also, if it is, how can we compare with other opportunities to apply to invest the money? Is it worth to go to this business? What's the risks involved? So this is one thing that we were participating on that. Several companies, several consultants. Also, it was involved the university and different, let's say, stakeholders were involved on that. And then finally came the regulators, and then ANP stepped in, also with Navy, the IBAMA, that's the Brazilian Environmental Agency. And so they started to develop the rules for the decommissioning. So if we have the equipment in there, the old equipment in there, installations, production platforms, pipelines, Christmas tree, manifold, everything. If we have the rules that we can apply to the rules, so you can see the market, you can see where we are and what can be done, and you can calculate the volume of the investment, the volume of the money that could be generated, and also some predictability, because now you know the rules, you know the assets that need to be decommissioned, and then we could have a good business plan for that. But we were in this way when came this crazy year of 2020, the year that came with the pandemic. And then it started the year, okay, let's say March, April, we were considering that maybe would be a lost year. It was very complicated around the world, so the news that arrived was not easy. At the end, it showed that the year was really complicated. And we saw a slowdown around the world in the oil and gas business, a slowdown of projects or of new initiatives of the operators, postponing the final investment decision in several projects, postponing several investments. So, but here in Brazil, it was different. What happened in Brazil at that time is that Petrobras, I think, in one intelligent decision, Petrobras saw the downturn of the market, so all the companies needed to cut not only costs but also price. That's a more difficult cut to be done, And so Petrobras accelerated everything. And the Petrobras decided not only to accelerate in the pre-salt. Petrobras also, of course, the pre-salt, that's the main area for Petrobras, is the cash cow of Petrobras. You see fields like Búzios, this very interesting field being developed there. But also in the decommissioning area. So Petrobras laid at the end of the year one tender to decommissioning 1,000 kilometers of flexible lines. 1,000 kilometers is a lot of work. 1,000 kilometers, you can lay those pipes from Rio to São Paulo and come back. Or you can lay those pipes from London to Paris and come back. So it's a lot of pipes that we are talking about for this project here. So this is, and the other thing that happened even in 2020 was, remember that I was talking about the involvement of the Brazilian Oil Agency, ANP, the Navy and the IBAMA. They concluded the rules and they issued the rules for the decommissioning. I think in April or May, if I'm not wrong, but in the first semester of the year, we had now a complete set of rules to see ahead. So this year of 2020, at the end, was a kind of a solution, a kind of consolidation of this market of decommissioning here in the country. So now you can see that we are going in a solid way. We are going to a mature business here in Brazil. Saipem is following all this movement here, not only here, but around the world, but especially here in Brazil. That's where I can say more about the involvement of Saipem. But Saipem has a long tradition work on this decommissioning. It started mainly on the North Sea, because Saipem has one of the most comprehensive fleet of vessels and the other assets to do the EPCI of the subsea, of the offshore projects. And of course, it was natural that those same assets were used for the decommissioning, to remove those equipments. And so Saipem developed a special team to work on that. It's based in London. And they accumulated a lot of experience on that, doing several other decommissioning projects in London, sorry, in the North Sea. And so the assets are available worldwide. We can use those assets worldwide. We also looked for some other improvement that we could do. Saipem is very proud of its intense engineering capacity and its R&D people, and we start to develop some, let's say, monitoring vehicles, kind of AUV, but sophisticated with artificial intelligence on board. It was developed mainly in Brazil, but also in Italy. So it was developed in the beginning together with Shell, in a project for Shell. Now we are launching this AUV called Flatfish. That's the name chosen by Shell. We keep this name, and we are launching this next year. And it will help in the commissioning, first to map everything that is on the seabed, because part of the decommissioning is to clean the field, to remove the debris that are down there. And after the decommissioning, there are, in some cases, the requirement of the ANP in Brazil to monitor the field, especially wells and other assets. So this will help also in this monitoring. I just mentioned that to say that Saipem is involved in several areas of the decommissioning and is present in Brazil for more than half a century. We'll talk about centuries, a lot of time, about half a century. And has one important asset there in Guarujá, São Paulo states, with a marine base, with an area that you can dispose materials. So, sorry for that. And now we are ready for that. Of course, now what we can see is that it is becoming, the commission in Brazil is becoming business as usual. There is operator, there is a contractor, we need to follow the contract, and then we will go on this regular risk that you see, especially in the contract with Petrobras. That's the main operator here in Brazil. It is the company that has the majority of the assets to be decommissioned. And so we'll go to the traditional risk that you have, that we have seen. One the most important risk that we see is that the cash flow of the project, let's say this project, for instance, of this decommissioning of 1,000 kilometer flexibles, the cash flow is negative, and you know all the companies, especially the contractors, nowadays has some issues to raise the money to finance the projects. So if we can, we have everything here in Brazil to develop it, and if we can fix this situation when you have a more neutral cash flow, I think that the future of this decommissioning in Brazil is brilliant. We see now what you have in Campos Bays in Northeast for more than 10 years work, let's say 2030, and then when in more 10 years we will start to think in this commissioning of the pre-salt, because you remember, the first platform in pre-salt, the first FPSO in pre-salt is already 10 years in production. So in a few years, 10 years, and 10 years goes very fast, so we start to talk about the commission there. So it means that for the future here in Brazil, we see the market very strong. That's all that I have for today. Thanks all for your time.
Thank you, Lauro. It was interesting to hear your overview over the very comprehensive overview of the history, the recent history of decommissioning here in Brazil and all the challenges that we have ahead. But it's also good to hear that this is every day is better established, and which will for sure contribute for companies like Saipem to be interested in this decommissioning area, which is a good benefit for everyone, for the operators to have more companies interested in this business area. Thank you.
Okay, Marcelo, thanks a lot. We work together sometime in some opportunities. It's good to see you again. Okay, thanks a lot.
My pleasure. So I think we can ask everyone to join us for this final part of this panel, where we will address some questions to the participants. Okay. I think Dorothy had a connection problem, so I was waiting for her. So I can start with the questions. And, first of all, I wish to thank you all for the very interesting presentations. We had a very interesting lineup with different solutions, different discussions that will sure contribute to the knowledge of equipment, of management, of innovation in the decommissioning area. The first question that I have will be to Will. We have heard of multiple challenges in the. Is there a clear picture of the supply chain capabilities?
Well, in fact, both capability and capacity. I'm not sure it's our experience in other parts of the world that one of the first challenges a lot of the operators find, and even the major contractors such as Saipem and elsewhere, is getting a clear picture of who to work with within their procurement process. And so, as an organisation, we've helped a number of countries, various enterprise agencies, and universities to try and map out their supply chain, to put some clarity over where the gaps are and where the risks may be. And they're not always the most obvious. So an example can be as simple as you can recover the flow lines, but there may not be the waste management skills to handle the flow lines once they get to the quayside. So there are some practical steps that the Brazilian industry and supply chain can do to improve that visibility of the capacity and certainly the capability.
Okay, thank you, Will. There is another question here from the audience. Maybe you can help us to answer. It was there was a similar question in the previous section related to the opportunity of reuse of this infrastructure that we have here in Brazil for innovative solutions in terms of energy generation, renewable energy, and previous panel there was a question related to reuse these assets for carbon capture. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges and the innovations that can be used in this? Will, did you hear my question?
I think he fall.
Yeah. Andy, can you help with this question?
Oh, I'm not sure. Would you be able to repeat it, Marcelo?
Oh, sure. Yes. I was asking about just to any of you that can contribute with the experience in UK related to the reuse of the assets that are to be decommissioned for renewable energy generation or even carbon capture situations. Is this business that is growing in UK? Can you give us some highlights of that?
Yeah, certainly. So from a carbon capture and storage side, we've been involved in a project ourselves. So I think there's 5 main projects developing in the UK at the moment, looking to use existing oil and gas infrastructure. Some of them will be installing new pipelines. Some are trying to reuse existing pipelines and infrastructure, and obviously make use of the existing fields that are coming to the end of their life. So there's definitely opportunities in the UK. I believe there's also some projects in Norway that were sanctioned recently. So I'm sure a lot of that experience and technology will eventually get exported and utilized in Brazil.
Also, in terms of general reuse projects, I led a reuse group when I was at Decom North Sea, and there's been a lot of consideration of how elements of the platforms, etc., can be reused. And I think the most success that has happened in the UK sector is when they work with other sectors. So they work with construction sector, and work with the water sector. So there can be reuse of elements. There's reuse of valves, reuse of pipes, reuse for substructures when they're doing construction. So there's lots of different things that the elements can be reused for. But as Andy mentioned, there's a lot of work on carbon capture and storage as well. So there's certainly, it's in its infancy. It's been hard work to get the reuse rather than the recycling of the reuse platforms. But I think they're also looking at things like, as part of the energy transition, where they might use a platform for hydrogen creation, green hydrogen creation, for example. So certainly as part of the whole sort of net zero drive in the UKCS, there's much more focus again on reuse rather than decommissioning, because it's a positive benefit, and certainly it's carbon intensive activity to chop up platforms and take them to shore for recycling. So therefore anything that can be done to reuse the assets, I think is very much something that I think if Brazil looks at that just now before they've embarked on major decommissioning projects, then I think there's ability to do an awful lot more by focusing on it early, for sure.
Yeah, it's for sure it's a good opportunity for Brazil that is one step behind to look into these solutions and try to apply them here also, right? Thank you. My next question goes to Andy, related to Latrix equipment. What length of product can be held within the cassettes?
Okay, so yeah, good question. So the cassettes themselves are roughly the same diameter, same length, and have roughly got the same kind of mass capabilities. So it's very much dependent on the diameter of the pipeline. So for a smaller pipeline, such as a 2.5 inch, you can typically get around 290, 300 sections in, which equates to about 3.5 kilometers. As you start to get bigger, something like a 10-inch pipeline, you'd be able to get around 0.5 kilometer in. And then above that, the kind of efficiency of the cassette started in the presentation, we would remove the cassette and we would chop sections off a bundle or a large pipeline in the catenary, chop it, fold the tar down onto deck, and use the deck trolleys to accommodate that. So yeah, it depends very much on the diameter of the product.
Despite most of the recent opportunities here in Brazil are in shallow water, but we also have in Brazil deep water fields that in the future will be also decommissioned. Right? So I think that this question can go to Dorothy also. Are there any limitations in the water depth in which the system can be used?
No, it's just a case of looking at what depth you're going to. We've been working with a company in the deep water mining sector and looking at removing nodules of 10,000 tons from 5,000 meter water depths. And it's just a case of adjusting for the depths you have. The system is called ambient because the pressure inside the system is equal to the water pressure outside the system. But obviously, if you're bringing up items, very heavy items from very deep water, then you need to look at other ways, perhaps having some compressed air backup or having some feedback from the system. So using downlines to a certain depth. So using a different grade of pipe to make sure that it handles the pressures. But essentially, if you think of the pressure of the water and compressed air inside the system is the same as the outside, then the system itself will not compress, but it's just adding that extra buoyancy, then perhaps some injection of compressed air at depth. But we pre-charge the system to depth. So the only issue is whilst it's moving through the water column, it needs to either expel extra pressure or increase pressure, depending whether it's rising or falling.
Thank you. Thank you, Dorothy. Andy, can you answer about related to the Latrix?
Yes, certainly. Yes. So I mean, the starting point for Latrix design was really looking at UK North Sea, so looking at kind of 200 meters or thereabouts. Some of the projects that we're encountering in Asia and Brazil, they're in significantly shallower waters, so we can get away with a lighter system, which reduces the cost and reduces the rental rates. But we have looked at some deep water bundle recoveries off Norway, in which case the line tension goes up, which is a factor of the mass of the product and the water depth. And we've looked at a heavier design of system to accommodate that. So it's very much based about the size of the system, its capacity, and the type of vessel that you would need to handle those line tensions.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting. I have a question for Lauro also. Lauro, we have been talking a lot about the decommissioning of subsea infrastructure, like pipelines, flexible pipes, right? Because of the old school and all these opportunities that are coming. But I also know that we have a lot of fixed platforms to be decommissioned in near future, right? Here in Brazil, fixed jackets and in northeast of Brazil, they have a lot. Can you tell us about what can we expect about this market in Brazil, and what will be the challenges, and what can we expect from Saipem perspective?
Okay, interesting question. Thanks for raising that subject. It's interesting because to remove a platform in shallow water, let's say you have some northeast of Brazil, 15, 20 meters, even less than that. So, and you have some here in Campus Base, more than 100 meters water depth. So they are different challenges. One, the first challenge is to remove the top side. To remove the top side, you need a crane for that. So the bigger the crane, less operation you have, less time you have offshore, less risk you take, even for the people, for HSE point of view. So if, of course, those equipment, heavier the crane, heavier is the vessel that support the crane, but the total duration is far less than the other option that you go with a smaller crane, and then it took more time to do the operation. This will be this trade-off between the two options. And I think that at the end it can be an option of the operator, because if the operator let it open, it will be several possible solutions to be analyzed, to be compared, but it can take a lot of time to conclude the operation. So I think that there will be this analysis, and maybe there can be a definition from the operator for a less time-consuming operation. The other part that's really difficult also to remove is the jacket itself. That's another subject, because you need to cut the jacket to remove from the seabed. It's dependent on the case by case in the water depths. If we can remove below the seabed, or if we can remove above the seabed, leaving some few meters below. So this is issues, especially in shallow water. If, for instance, in the Cação decommissioning, those three platforms, the Cação field, just decided to remove below the seabed. So those are and they have the same consideration. The bigger the crane that you have, faster is the operation and less risk on the operation. Basically, this is my point of view on this question.
Thank you. I have another question here for Dorothy, from Marco. How we can demonstrate the disruptive impact of having same capex able to attend the different demands on such a full of uncertainties challenge as the company?
I'm sorry, could you repeat? It was very difficult to hear you. I'm sorry.
Question, yes. How we can demonstrate the disruptive impact of having same capex able to attend different demands on such a full of uncertainties challenge as the
I think it's always difficult with decommissioning because all companies want to spend zero, and they want to spend money bringing oil out. They don't want to spend money decommissioning. So what I think many companies must do is look at how do they optimize their doing things ahead of time. So start doing well abandonment and conductor removal, for example, ahead of your cessation of production, and that then allows you to absorb some of your costs whilst you're still making money on an asset. But obviously what you want to do is to minimize the time between your cessation of production and your final close down of the asset. So anything that can speed up that process and minimize that time and make sure you can do as much activity in parallel as possible, then you're going to minimize that CapEx expenditure. But it's something that nobody wants to spend money on. So therefore, the technology that you use, the methods that you use, and the ways in which you do this are all about doing it as quickly as possible, not just as low cost as possible, because speed will, if you think an asset, we were talking to an operator in the North Sea for whom their asset was costing up to 100 million per year to keep it operational to allow decommissioning to happen. If we can carry out the conductor removal in parallel and immediately after each well has been plugged and abandoned, then that was estimated to save them between 1 and 2 years. So that might be £200 million saving because we've done things more quickly. And the same with any of the other technologies, Andy's technology, whatever, all of it allowing things to happen in parallel allows that to happen much more quickly. So that's the key is getting smart about the methodology, not just the technology you use.
Thank you, Donis. I have another question for you, Andy. What type of cutting equipment can be used with the equipment spread?
Okay, so the way we've designed the spreads to allow a range of third-party equipment to be used. So we can accommodate shear cutters, we can accommodate diamond wire cutters, and we can accommodate cutting discs. So it's really down to the properties of the product we're looking to recover. Is it a rigid pipeline? Is it umbilical, a cable? So yeah, it just depends on the particular project.
Okay, thank you. For Saipem, Lauro, I have a question here from Amaury. When will be the next opportunity of an offshore decommissioning in Brazil, and how about the continuity of this work?
Well, challenging question. Yeah, my crystal ball is not working today, but what I understood, talk to the main operator in Brazil, is that they have a plan for having a continuity on this operation. Of course, I don't have the information, but I think that this will be a continuous business here in Brazil. When you consider the rules of E&P and also the volume of assets that you have to be decommissioned. But sorry for that, Amaury, but I don't have the answer because it's depending more on the Petrobras decisions.
Thank you. There is a question here from Flavia that she is from our national nuclear energy sector here, and she is asking about the operations of the equipment from Quasi and Latrix regarding deal with Norm. Can you tell us a little bit how are you planning to deal with this material, such as hard scales that may be present in the pipes? Dorothy, if you want to start with it.
So our key approach is looking at obviously getting as much information ahead of time as possible, so you can plan you have to assume that you will have scale, you will have norm, you will have substances that you need to deal with. And it's about choosing a decommissioning methodology that's taking that into account. Obviously, if you're cutting items subsea, you've got a risk of contamination. So you make sure that you know as much as possible. Has the pipeline been flushed, cleaned, to the right part of the million, etc. But if it's not been, one of the things we've been looking at with one of the big Brazilian operators is around taking the sections of flexible within one of our ambient pipes. So therefore it's sealed within the ambient pipe. So therefore it will not leak hydrocarbons, because particularly as you're approaching the surface, so any hydrocarbon that might be in the skin of the old flexibles might then leak. So by encapsulating it, then you're making sure that you're avoiding that risk, if you like. So it's all about anticipating the risks and doing everything you can to avoid them, but then looking at how do you mitigate for them when you do come across problems, because subsea projects by their nature, you can plan all you like, but there will be things that will happen in a different order, or you'll be affected by weather, or something that you thought was going to be easy to move is not. So it's all about having experienced personnel as part of the team as you're learning the process in a new area. It was the same in the North Sea when we didn't know that much about it. You made sure that you had the OIM who'd been involved in the asset and knew everything about the asset. You made sure that you had vessel companies that had the experience. Anybody with subsea experience will know how to work in this environment. So it's about mitigating and planning for all of the unexpected things, which we're already pretty good at in oil and gas. But that's not to be complacent. It's about looking to make sure, how do we contain any potential risks and make sure that we're minimising and leaving no traces as we we're looking to do within the sea.
Thank you, Dorothy. Andy, can you answer this question?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So certainly, I know this has been an issue in the North Sea. We had this discussion with some operators a couple of weeks ago. So I agree with Dorothy's comments. It's really about having good practices and good procedures, kind of continued monitoring of what's coming up onto the surface as it's being recovered, making use of kind of safe working environments, and then kind of capping the recovered sections to prevent any contamination. So it's all down really to the planning and the procedures and kind of preventing the worst, as Dorothy said.
Thank you. I think we can finalize with one question that the three companies can answer, which is what are the next steps for the market here in Brazil? Dorothy, if you want to start.
Okay, so I think you're doing exactly the right thing in that you're looking to see who else has been doing this already and what experience have they learned. What would we advise you not to do because it's not worked well. And I think, as Will mentioned earlier, the beauty of decommissioning is because it's not a competitive space where oil companies are competing against each other to raise the greatest amount of barrels in the minimum time, that everybody is willing to share, within a confidential environment. But, when we were working with when I was working with Decom North Sea, and we were bringing together a bunch of operators and service companies in the room, as long as that was, a closed door session that was confidential, they would share all sorts. They would share the good news and the bad news, and make sure that everybody understood that, we had difficulty doing this, or perhaps you would consider doing something to mitigate against it. And I think, talk to other operators, talk to other service companies, talk to those who've done it before, and they will willingly share. It very much is that kind of marketplace, and the greatest amount of collaboration I've seen in the oil and gas sector is in decommissioning.
Lauro,
Okay. Well, let me remember one thing. That is on the decommissioning rules from the ANP, a requirement to establish, they call PDI. That's more or less plan to decommission of the installation, something like that. But there is the obligation of each operator for each field to have this 5 years before, for the offshore field, 5 years before they plan to decommission that. Nowadays, there are more than 20 PDI already approved. If they'll be implemented this year, next year, the other year, okay, this is one thing to be seen. But there is more than 20 already approved. So it means that this decommissioning will go on. Which one will be the first, the second, the third? This is a decision of the operators, but they have this commitment towards the national agency to decommission those, and they are also, there are some, I do not remember how much, but there are several others being analyzed, already proposed by the companies. You see it on the news, on the specialized sites. So I think that the future here for the decommissioning will be really interesting. We have lots of opportunities.
Thank you, Andy.
Yes, I think 2 points from my side. I think collaboration is going to be key. So there's no reason why multiple operators can't work together to drive down costs. As Dorothy said, it's no one's advantage spending large sums of money. So people can work together and pull kind of campaigns together to reduce mobilizations and demobilizations and make the most of those assets. And I think from a collaboration point of view, the supply chain can do that as well. So for example, working with vessel operators in the region. Those companies that do embrace and do support new technologies will be the ones that will come out to save the most, kind of forge a way ahead, I guess, in the sector.
Thank you. Well, I think we can. I just want to once more thank you very much for attending this webinar. From not only from the university side, where innovation is always very interesting for us to see. So there was a lot of talking about innovation today, and but also from Sobena's side, which always embrace this type of opportunity to show innovative solutions to our engineering community. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you again in other opportunities and other webinars.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. We're very excited about the opportunities in Brazil, and as I say, aside from commercial for our own company, I'm just very passionate about how do we do the best job of decommissioning wherever we are in the world. So anything we can do to help, very, very happy to add my small piece of knowledge to help that.
Okay, thanks a lot for all. It was very interesting. I have the opportunity to learn a lot with Andy and Dorothy, and also with Will and Destry in the beginning. So thanks a lot to all.
Yeah, from my side, Marcelo, thanks again. It's been really interesting. I think the Brazilian market is going to be a really interesting opportunity for a lot of UK companies. So hopefully the work together.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Ciao.
Bye.